I didn't realize you have 12.8% of your assets under management in Tesla at this point.
Yeah, because it went up 20 times in the past 2 or 3 years. I don't know if you might remember when I was on initially and I was describing the investment, I said, I thought we would make, 20 times our money in this investment. And what do you know? We invested $380 million. And between 2014 and 2016, the average price was then about $40 a share. And we've made about $1 billion, about 20 times so far. So we made about $6 billion so far. We sold about $1 billion worth of stock.
Just because you didn't want it to be an even bigger position in the portfolio?
Yes. Well, what it was is that I was getting widely criticized for having such a large percentage of my assets in 2 of our mutual funds, Barron Partners Fund and Barron Focused Growth Fund, in one stock. And people said, how can you be so crazy? And so I wanted them to think I wasn't crazy. I know I'm crazy, but they didn't want, and they don't want to be responsible to people. And I didn't want people to say, he's lost his mind. And even though I think for Tesla, this is the very beginning of what they're doing. I'm a huge fan of Mary Barra, and I think she will be successful. And they have this cruise inside of it that I think is going to be a very cool business. And we're an investor in cruise through her private company.
But just in terms of what will you do next? So you think GM will be successful too? You think this is just the beginning for Tesla? Meaning what?
Yeah, so they did 310,000 cars in the quarter, and people said, well, they should have done 317,000 cars in the quarter. And but at one the plant in China was closed for about 4 or 5 days, and there's supply chain problems in this period of time. And so everyone's focused on with this quarter for 310,000 cars. In 4 years, 3 years, they're going to be doing $1 million a quarter, not 310,000, a million cars a quarter. And if you go 10 years, they're going to be doing something like 5 million cars a quarter. So here you are doing 310,000 cars, and people saying a few thousand more, a few thousand less. I'm thinking about in 8 or 10 years, this is 20 million car company.
You expect to still be an investor in 8 to 10 years?
Yes.
Are you selling any more shares?
Periodically, if people say, if it gets crazy big relative to the size of the fund right now, then I would. Now, I own 1 million quarter shares for our firm in the company. I have not sold a single share of that, and I don't expect to.
Okay.
In my lifetime.
In your lifetime, you don't expect?
In my lifetime.
Okay.
And the same thing with SpaceX. So I think we're going to make 3 or 4 or 5 times our money in the next 10 years in Tesla. And I think
again, from on top of the money that you've made.
And in the case of SpaceX, I think over the next 10 years, we're probably going to make 20 or 30 times our money.
When do you think that company goes public?
I think that it's unlikely that SpaceX is going to go public anytime soon. But this Starlink business that they have, I think that could go public in the next 3 years. And that's the business that is ultimately looking, that's this, was describing to you about Ukraine. I think that's a business that could ultimately is addressing a potential, they call it TAM, total addressable market, of $1 trillion, actually multiple trillions, communications. And so it's for the government, it's for commercial, it's for people who don't have internet. If you want to have more equitable distribution of wealth in the world, you have to have people educated. The way you get educated is you have to have the internet. If you don't have the internet, you can't accomplish that. So this is broadband satellite internet, and it's an unbelievable business. And the reason they can do it and other people can't is that they have no cost for launch. So everyone, I want to talk about this. And everyone else has launch costs of $100 million, $200 million, $300 million per rocket, and they use it one time and then it burns up. Our guy sends up his rockets, brings it back down and uses them over and over again. So his cost is a tiny fraction of the cost of a rocket.
Ron, you are a big believer in Tesla and a big believer in SpaceX. Before everybody else went along with that route, that they were great companies, what did you see in Tesla early on and what do you see in SpaceX now?
In Tesla early on, I thought the opportunity was to convert the cars that we make in the United States and the world from gasoline to electric. And that hadn't been accomplished ever before, and I was betting on Elon Musk. And so far, and most people bet against them. We invested $380 million in between 2014 and 2016 after thinking that we shouldn't invest in it, and was 1.5% of our assets at the time. And we made $4 billion in profit in so far, and I think we're going to make another triple, maybe 4 times over the next 10 years.
What about SpaceX? Is SpaceX the same as Tesla?
It's the same idea where you're disrupting an industry that is a cost-plus industry. So all of the aerospace companies don't do research, and they didn't want to innovate. And the reason they didn't is because they had a business that was producing rockets, and they felt if they could use a rocket over and over again, why would they make, they wouldn't be a demand for fewer rockets. And so as a result of that, there was no innovation, and what they would do is they would subcontract out the work that they did on these rockets, so they would become more and more and more expensive, and the government would just pay it. So Elon comes along and he says, I got a cheap way to get to space, and the cheap way is by using the rockets over and over and over again. And everyone else said that was impossible to accomplish. And as a result of that, no one did it, and our man did. And this is a real big cash flowing business. He expects to have 40,000 satellites. So it's cheap satellites. Everyone else would send up satellites and be very, very expensive. When you can use the rocket over and over again, then it's inexpensive to get it. Your launch is inexpensive, and that gives you a chance to put up a lot of satellites and serve need for humanity.
All right, but let me ask you about this. You have one person, there's the CEO of both companies.
Yes.
Doesn't it make you nervous that one person is driving both companies? Normally you would invest in somebody who is running 2 companies at the same time, would you?
We have one person running 2 companies, one person who is, working, ungodly hours, totally dedicated, doesn't need very much sleep. I was speaking to a director of SpaceX 2 nights ago. And so I was saying, how's Elon doing? And he says, he's doing unbelievably. He lives in this small cottage, 2 bedrooms, on this desert property. And I said, is there air conditioning? He said, yes, there's air conditioning. But he's from South Africa, so he doesn't need as much. But he is in air conditioning, and he works all but 5 hours a day, and he works continuously, totally dead. He's like you. So you spend your time on airplanes. He spends his time in factories and producing these things.
Right now, many people think the stock market's pretty high, fairly valued, very fully valued, many people would say. So are you nervous about that?
I don't worry about it. And in 2019, December 99 through 2008, were really difficult 8 or 9 years for the stock market. The stock market was down 30 or 40%, 3 or 4% a year for 8 or 9 years. We didn't make a lot of money in that period of time, but we didn't lose. We were up 25% over that 8 or 9 year period of time, which was really terrible for the market. And then since then, of course, we've done very well. And what I think is that, so my big picture of the world, the only thing I am certain of is, I'm sure about our economy, I'm sure about our country, but I think that the value of my money will fall in half every 17 or 18 years. That means that everything I want to buy is going to double in price every 17 or 18 years. So I regard stocks as a hedge against that depreciation of my currency. So I want to own stocks, shares of businesses that can outpace inflation. So that's my simple look.